Good morning. So, as you could tell, I was just in the shower, which got me thinking about a whole another level of homesteading that is so essential and so important. So, homesteading or creating your own homestead isn't just about food security, but water security. So, I just wanted to start by saying I don't have a big piece of land. I literally have a two-bedroom house on a well, fairly just slightly bigger than average garden. So it's just under 2,000 square meters. So it's not a huge piece of land, but it's big enough to grow some fruits and veggies. And there's a flat where my mother-in-law stays. So it's just like a suburban house. I don't have anything fancy, but it's a suburban house in a forest. So that's the fancy part, is that I'm kind of living in a semi-rural area. So that brings me to start with saying why I started homesteading, or really focusing on homesteading in the first place. So we moved to, sorry, let me just get, we moved to the lower south coast we landed here March 2021, 1st of March 2021. With all the stuff and that going on with COVID, we just had that, we made that decision to move, to come here, to start a new life. What a challenging start that was. Our first really biggest challenge we faced was in July 2021. So here in South Africa in July 2021, so we'd only been here for 3 months. We had huge violent riots across the country. The area where we are was really badly affected. Stores were looted. Within 48 hours, the little town was destroyed. It was very scary and quite literally some of the darkest days and nights of our lives. With that being said, because we're a small seaside village in slightly rural South Africa, when the supplies did start to run, we were kind of considered an area of least importance. As well, when the help from the army came, we were considered an area of least importance, unfortunately. So for the week after the riots, it was scary because I got to a point, I mean, whatever food was left in the supermarkets was rationed. You weren't allowed to buy if you could get there, because fuel was also rationed. As far as shopping malls go, we're almost an hour away from the closest shopping malls. So that meant if we wanted more supplies, we'd have to figure out how to get more fuel to be able to travel that far. So it was terrifying. There was no courier services really delivering, or food services really delivering to the area yet. And I remember one day just sitting on my kitchen floor and crying because I didn't know how I was going to feed my family. Luckily, just before the riots hit, we had news that it was possibly going to happen, and some of the local supermarkets had put out bulk specials on like bulk foods like rice and maize meal and sugar and like really essentials, and they had some bulk sales, and we had stocked up a little bit. So we sort of had just enough to get us through that very scary period. But there was a point when I literally was not sure if I was going to be able to continue to feed my family. And we'd always sort of grown veggies here and there, but we had literally only been living, we'd landed, we'd barely settled in. It was 3 months. And so we hadn't even had a chance to start putting trees or food in the ground and things like that. Luckily, shortly after that, the supplies did start opening up and deliveries that were possible, and things got better. But I decided to never find myself in that situation again, that no matter what, I'll always be able to feed my family. And that's when I really, really started pushing forward on the homesteading and the permaculture, because it's essential. It's essential. So it's not like in big city centers and that, where you do it just to save a few rands or whatever. It's, if something goes wrong, I need to be able to feed my family and need to know my family is secure. So I am very aware it's a long process to get a big food garden project up and going, especially if it's a food forest, permaculture food forest like I'm growing. I'm very aware it's a few years, and I don't want to be caught off guard again and not be sure how to feed my family. So that's my big driver behind making sure I have a food forest so that I can look after my family. But as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, along with making sure there's enough food, there is also making sure there's enough water. So here where we are on the lower south coast of KwaZulu-Natal, there has been very irregular supply, if any supply at all, of municipal water. So you can't really depend on water supply from the local government, mostly due to poor infrastructure and so many things. So for the past 15 years easily, the locals have learned to make their own water security. So there's very few houses, and the only houses that don't have water security are usually people who have a holiday house and they're from Joburg, so they don't understand the importance of it. But if you live on the south coast, you have water tanks and you have water storage in your house, because that's the only way you're going to do it. We currently have about 15,000 liters worth of water storage, and I believe Joburg is starting to get bad as well. When we lived in Joburg, water supply wasn't an issue. Municipal water came in the taps, no problem, but I believe it's starting to become a problem. So if you're in a part of a country where they're starting to experience water shortages, my recommendation to you is to speak to someone from the south coast of KwaZulu-Natal, because they will tell you exactly what you need to do, because it's a way of life. For more than a decade now, it's been a way of life on how to deal with these things. Luckily, we've had rainfall. We're in a high rainfall area, but that's a whole another challenge we're starting to face now, which I'll go into in a moment. But I'm going to give you quick math on how to work out how much water storage you need for your family. So this is how I worked it out. I calculated how much water my family uses in an average week, which is, we have a small family. It's just my wife and I and her mom and our pets. In a week, we can use 2,500 liters. That's just playing it safe. That's 2,500 liters a week. So that's 10,000 liters a year. And that's not like showering in excess every day or, doing it. That's like on water saving mode. You'll use 10,000 liters a month. So you need to look at how much water your family uses in a month and say, okay, per month my family uses X amount. So my family uses 10,000 liters a month. Then you have to look at your rainfall cycle and work out how much water you would need to be able to store during the dry season. So for us, historically, our dry season was only 2 months, July and August. That means I would have to have a minimum storage of 20,000 liters to make sure my family's okay and has water security going forward on a rainfall water collection system, which is what we primarily have, because municipal water cannot be relied on, and the municipal water that does come is not drinkable. So even though we do have a municipal line and we fill up if we can, Um, we have had to rely primarily on rainwater with a filtered rainwater system. So I know that if I cannot rely on the local municipal water at all, and I have um, rainwater system, currently I can save enough water for 1.5 months or 6 weeks without there being any rain. That being said, rain has started to become less and less sparse, and I've been telling my wife for the longest time because we had 2 years in a row where we had floods, and I said to her, after the floods comes drought. Because when you're homesteading or doing gardening of any kind, when you're growing food, you need to learn your weather cycles and how the weather works, and weather generally works in a 7-year cycle. So every year is different for 7 years. And after heavy rainfall season comes a drought season. And we've had a couple of years of heavy rainfall, so heavy that we've actually had floods and damages to the area. And I've been telling her, drought season is coming. We need to get prepared because it's coming. We're not in it yet, but it's coming. And this year we've had very little rain. Very little rain. We've had to rely on filling out from the municipality when they have water. So we've obviously had some very scary moments where we haven't been sure if we're going to have water or not. Luckily, some of the local farmers net who have borehole do sell water as well, obviously at a profit. So if you have to not just pay your municipal account, you also have to buy water. Luckily, we've never had to get to the point where we've had to buy water, because we've managed our water storage to that level where we can just get by for the most part between rains. But now it's getting to the point where we really need to consider something even more drastic. So how the water system works here on the south coast is, once you've calculated how much you need, your water tanks should be linked to both rain and municipal lines. So you could put a ball stop valve in for municipal lines to automatically fill up, which we don't. We actually switch off our municipal line and rely mostly on rainwater. We only fill up from the municipal line if we really need to, and like I said, if there is actual municipal water. So it's primarily a rainwater system with a municipal backup. Something to consider. So it can be automated so that when the municipality does have water, your water tanks automatically fill up, and then the shuttle valve will shut down when your tanks are full. That's something to look at if you're living in an area where water is starting to become inconsistent. And then obviously, like I said, with rainwater addition to that, so you'll have your gutters all running into the tank, and make sure that you have first flushes and leaf catchers and filters and all of that. So it does cost a bit to get set up, but if you do it in sections, like you do tank by tank, 5,000 litre tank at a time, it becomes more affordable. But we're at the point now where rain is becoming less and municipal supply cannot be relied on, so we need to start considering dropping a borehole, which is a huge financial investment if it can be done. Obviously, they're going to come and test if it's possible. Luckily, some of our neighbors have managed to successfully drop borehole. And also, when you drop for borehole, you've got to make sure the water is drinkable. So just because you have a borehole doesn't mean it's drinkable water. But just to get to that process to see if it's possible is tens of thousands of rands, which is a lot of money. So it's also one of the reasons why I'm picking up this channel again, is in the hopes of being able to monetize it to do things like pay for a borehole and to get water security. So my recommendation is start now, start today. It's like planting the trees for fruit in 10 years. Today you need to start looking at your water security, because the way the world is going, the way the weather patterns are going, the next few years may be very challenging in having that water security for your family. So even if you have 1 or 2 rainwater tanks to get started, it doesn't have to be for drinking water, but it can be for cleaning water, watering your garden, etc., all of those things. But seriously, look into it. It is something that is so super worth the investment, and being able to take care of your family with not having to stress about water at the very least is just so super important. And we do live in a country where it is a challenge to be able to rely on our government to assist us with these things. And if you're not in a major city centre like us, and you're in a small seaside village, yeah, you have the benefits of looking at the ocean every day, but you don't always have the benefits of service delivery from the government. And you are seen as of least concern. So growing your own food and harvesting your own water is really important. If there's anything specific you would like me to cover or discuss in any of these videos, if I know about it, I will most definitely share. If there's anything specific you want to learn about that you know that I do, let me know and I'll focus on a few more videos of that. But yeah, I just wanted to share this video with you on water security and weather patterns. It is so, so important to understand your weather patterns in your region, and not just for water supply, for growing food. Obviously, I luckily have a year-round growing season. A lot of regions don't. Some regions may only have a 3-month growing season. Some may have a 6-month growing season, but I have a year-round growing season that obviously brings in a lot more challenges than I ever thought I would face. Because yes, I might be able to grow fruits and veggies year-round, but I also have mosquitoes and flies and fruit flies year-round, and pests, and our standard winter pest would be like a summer pest for a 3-month growing season. So sometimes in summer it just gets crazy with the amount of pests. You lose a lot of food and crops to pests. So you have to learn important things like companion planting for pest control. I live in my home is a zero poison home, so we don't use poisons. What we do is grow a ecosystem. So we focus on growing an ecosystem to look after itself. But creating an ecosystem in your garden, in your food gardens, takes time to establish, and it gets very difficult. So you'll have a year or two where you really struggle with the pests and pest control until you're able to establish that ecosystem. So for example, one of our biggest pests, but they're not really pests, but pests, are monkeys. But that being said, we have crowned eagles that hunt the monkeys in our garden. I literally have a video of a crowned eagle in my garden with a monkey in its talons. So we obviously grow really tall trees because those are the most likely to attract the crowned eagle, and have the crowned eagle be in our garden more, and that'll keep the monkeys away more. It sounds terrible, but that's a larger idea of the smaller version of things of what we deal with. Obviously, when it comes down to like insects and bugs, then you've got to look at things like attracting dragonflies. We have swarms of dragonflies that come into our garden, and I love it. They're absolutely beautiful, but their number one food source is mosquitoes. So yes, we have mosquitoes and it's annoying, but then we get the beautiful dragonflies that come along with that. Every little critter has its nemesis. So we just try to develop an entire ecosystem that attracts everything, and we have a zero poison philosophy in our home, and that also makes for generationally stronger plants because now they have to become more pest resistant. Yeah, so anyway, that being said, learning to create ecosystems, creating water security, and learning to watch weather patterns is very important. because all of those things are what's going to help you to have a successful food garden or food forest at the end of the day, and to have that food security if you want to have a permaculture homestead type vibe like we have. So do yourself a favor and really start to pay attention to these things, even something as simple as sunrise and sunset times, when is the equinoxes and solstices, um, the moon. The moon affects life. It really affects life. What do different critters sound like? Because they're part of the ecosystem in your garden. So you want to know what's in your garden, so that you know what's happening in your garden. This year, for example, we've very noticeably had no rain frogs singing yet. And normally they are singing this time of year. I think I've heard one rain frog. And that tells me that the little bit of rain that we have had has always been a surface rain. Hasn't been a lot of rain. So basically what that means is a rain frog lives underground, and when it pours down with rain and it reaches the frog knows that it's now time to come above ground for breeding season. And that's when they just sing the most beautiful songs. So if you're not hearing the rain frogs, that means there's not enough rain, which is a scary thought. So really get to know your environment, and part of a successful food forest and a homestead is learning to live with nature, not against it. You're not a part of nature, but if you learn to live with nature, you'll find much more success and really learn the critters around you. You'll be surprised at what you might discover and what you might learn. I know when the monkeys do certain calls, what it means that there's prey, that the eagles are around. Then they have very certain specific calls. Certain birds, when they make certain calls, I know that there's danger around, things like that. Or they're just breeding, or whatever the case may be. So you really want to pay attention to the wildlife when you are surrounded by wildlife and little critters. Then it takes it right down to the macroscopic level of even the cicadas. Wow, cicadas are amazing warning systems if you learn to listen to them. They will warn you of imminent danger. A lot of people don't realize that, but when you live in the forest, you learn. And as well as, like I said, frogs. Even the frogs tell you. If there's no birds in the sky, you know something's up, etc. So yeah, pay attention to what's going on around you. Pay attention to the weather and the weather patterns. And I'm telling you now, it is April 2026. Inland, I know there's been a lot of floods, but I'm telling you now, guys, start preparing for drought season, especially if you're in an area where municipal water is not consistent. Start preparing yourself for drought season now, and you won't be crying in a few months to 1 to 2 years time when we're really in the heart of it. What else can I say? Drought tolerant plants, because you know drought season is coming, start researching drought tolerant plants for your region. And the plants that work in my region may not work in yours. So you really need to do your homework and find out what grows best, what you want to grow for your family, how do you grow it in different levels. Perhaps we should have if you guys are interested, we can have a whole basics 101 of permaculture growing and understanding, how to use endemic food and endemic plants, as well as your bought in non-traditional, non-endemic plants, to grow a sustainable ecosystem of food for yourself and nature. There's a whole lot of really, really looking into it. And even local endemic foods, plants for medicine. That's a huge one. We have we are in a country where we have a lot of endemic medicinal plants that most of us don't even look at because we're so used to hearing what the Western world tells us are medicinal plants. Meanwhile, we have a whole array of our own that we really need to start investing in for both food and medicine. I mean, we have the forest grape, we have the bushman's grape, we have the notsung berry, we have pigeonwood. These are all naturally occurring endemic food sources that you need to be aware of. What if something happens and there's this random tree growing in your garden that you knew was indigenous, but you didn't know you could eat it? Or it could be used for medicine in some way. So learning, it's a lot of that you can learn. If that's something you're interested in hearing more about, is what indigenous and endemic food plants and medicinal plants to have, I'm happy to tell you all the things that I've learned and how I've tried to learn to incorporate it into my actual food garden with non-indigenous plants and how to control those non-indigenous plants. Especially if you do homesteading with livestock, you will be surprised how many endemic plants are you can be used as fodder for your animals. And it's just for your animals to decide which ones they like or not. If you like us and we have a goat who's very fussy, it may be a challenge. But if that's something you're more interested in, as well as some basic permaculture practices of what I've developed over the years, let me know and I'll be happy to discuss more of those. So until next time, thank you for joining me, and I look forward to learning from you as much as hopefully I could just share the basic knowledge of what I've learned. I'm completely self-taught in these areas and I'm just quite literally learning as I go along. So if you have any advice, questions, queries, or want to know about more, please let me know in the comments below. I would really appreciate it. Till next time, thank you. Chat soon.